The Lord of the Rings. Return of the King. Book 5. Gandalf and Pippin ride to Minas Tirith. As they ride, Pippin sees fires in the distance. Gandalf informs him that those are warning beacons being lit. Gondor calls for aid. When they arrive at the gates of Minas Tirith, men know Gandalf and allow him to pass. The city is an old and beautiful city, but it has begun to decay. Gandalf quickly rides through the city to the White Tower where he can meet Denethor. Gandalf warns Pippin not to speak of Frodo and the ring nor of Aragorn. When they come before Denethor, he questions them about his son Boromir. Denethor reveals that he already knows of Boromir's death because he has the horn that had been broken. Pippin tells the story of Boromir's death and Denethor asks how Pippin could have survived when his son had not. Pippin tells how Boromir died to save him and offers his fealty to Denethor in honor of the death of his son. Denethor is pleased by this and asks Pippin to tell his story in full. They speak for more than an hour while Gandalf stands at the side. Denethor does not seem to be interested in Gandalf's counsel and this upsets Gandalf. Pippin thinks that Gandalf is upset with him, but Gandalf was actually quite pleased with Pippin's performance. Gandalf must then go and leaves Pippin on his own. Pippin soon meets a soldier of Gondor named Beregond and they go to find food and talk of the war. Beregond has Pippin go to meet his son so that Pippin may have some company. They end up watching reinforcements arrive, but there are fewer than is hoped. In Rohan Merry, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are headed with King Theoden back to Helm's Deep. On their way they meet another army that is at least as big as their company. Happily, it turns out that it is the Dunedain of the North along with the sons of Elrond. They had come to give aid to Aragorn though he did not know that they were coming. They say that they received a message from the Lady Galadriel that he needed their aid. Together they continue on and make it to Helm's Deep. There Merry eats with King Theoden and ends up swearing fealty to the King of Gondor. As the army is ready to leave, Aragorn comes before Theoden and with a heavy heart tells him that he must take the paths of the dead. In the end Legolas and Gimli stay with Aragorn while Merry goes on with Theoden. When Theoden and his men have gone, Aragorn tells Legolas and Gimli that he had looked into the Palantir. Aragorn tells them that he had spoken to Sauron and that he learned a mighty force is coming from the south and the only way to make it in time to stop that force is to go along the path of the dead. He also tells them how men of the mountain swore to help fight Sauron, but when the time came, they broke their oaths and Isildur cursed them to never rest until their oath was fulfilled. There was also a prophecy that tells of Isildur's heir who will come and lead the dead to fight. He asks Legolas and Gimli to ride with him and they agree. They ride to Dunharrow where they meet Éowyn, and when she learns that Aragorn intends to go along the paths of the dead, she begs him not to go, and when he insists that he must go she begs him to take her with him, but he refuses. Aragorn leaves with the Dunedain to pass through the Dark Door. Gimli is the last to pass through the gates and is shamed for he fears to go underground when men and even an elf fear not to go before him. When he enters, he feels the dead following behind. They leave the caves and come to the Stone of Erech, and Aragorn declares himself to be the heir of Isildur and orders the dead to aid him. They obey and begin passing through Gondor toward the southern landings. Merry and Theoden arrive in Dunharrow where a great host of Rohan riders has gathered. There they learn from Éowyn that Aragorn has indeed taken the paths of the dead. A herald from Gondor arrives and begs that Theoden and all of his men go to Gondor to help fight the armies of Mordor. Theoden informs the herald that he intends to go with his host of men to aid Gondor. The next day has no dawn as the shadow of Mordor grows darker every day. The men begin to move out. Theoden releases Merry from his service, arguing that Merry is too small to ride a horse and that it would slow them down too much to have him ride double. This upsets Merry for he wants to go to war with the men. A young man named Dernhelm offers to take Merry secretly on his horse and thus they ride to war. In Gondor, Pippin is back before Denethor to learn his duties. He is to be an errand runner and entertain the Lord with songs. Most of the day Pippin does nothing but stand to the side while the others make counsel with Denethor. At midday he goes out to have his meal with Beregond. Then to their dismay they sense the dread of the Nazgul. They are pursuing band of horsemen as they ride toward the city. The men cannot resist the power and dread of the Nazgul. Then a white horse rides to meet them. It is Gandalf and he drives back the Nazgul. When Gandalf and the men enter the city, Pippin sees them, and Faramir is surprised to see another hobbit like Frodo and Sam who he had been with only days before. They go before Denethor again, and Faramir tells his tale and of how he had met Frodo and Sam. The path the hobbits took seems to upset Gandalf. Denethor is also upset by the news of the hobbits, but his anger is more because he believes that the ring should have been hidden and not taken into Mordor. A battle of wills between Gandalf and Denethor rages, but what is done has already been done, and Gondor must do what it can without the ring. The next day Denethor sends Faramir to defend Osgiliath. The shadow of Mordor grows ever darker, and the host of Mordor descends on Osgiliath. Faramir and his men make the orcs pay dearly to cross the river, but, in the end, Osgiliath falls. Horsemen of Gondor go to aid the retreat of Faramir and his men. Unfortunately, Faramir is gravely injured in the battle. When Denethor hears of his son's grievous injury, he despairs, believing that all is lost, and that Rohan has abandoned them. The host of orcs begin to prepare themselves for a great battle. They build siege weapons and begin to launch missiles that go over the walls of Minas Tirith. The enemy even sends the heads of their fallen comrades over the walls. All the while Denethor sits with his dying son and gives no heed to the battle outside. Pippin stays with Denethor and tries to comfort him, though Denethor continues to despair. When men come to ask Denethor what they should do, he tells them that he cannot lead them, and they can follow Gandalf or whomever they wish. Gandalf takes charge of the defense. Denethor releases Pippin from his service, but Pippin refuses to go. Denethor sends for men to help him bring his son to the tombs. Denethor orders his men to bring wood and oil to put about them and ask that they burn him alive, because he believes the whole city will burn and he does not want to wait for the enemy to do it. Pippin then runs to find Gandalf. As Pippin searches for Gandalf, he meets Beregond and asks Beregond to help delay the funeral fire. As Pippin finds Gandalf, fear strikes Pippin, for one of the nine is leading an attack against the gates. A great ram breaks the gates of Minas Tirith. The leader of the nine passes through the gates and he is met by Gandalf. Just then bugles sound in the distance. The riders of Rohan have finally arrived. Days before, Merry is still hiding among the Rohan riders. He hears that wild men have come. He sneaks within earshot of the king's council with the wild men. They want to help Rohan take a less guarded path, for there are too many orcs for Rohan to deal with on the main road. They take the hidden paths of the wild men and see no orcs on their way. By taking the path they bypass places where they could have been held up for many days. They move through the night to make it to the fields of Gondor. When Rohan arrives, they see that the city is besieged, and all hope seems lost. King Theoden calls Rohan to ride. Horns blow and the men charge across the field. The riders charge and soon Theoden finds himself alone and facing the leader of the Nazgul. His horse is struck down and Theoden lands beneath it. The Witch King looks down upon Theoden ready to strike, but one man stands up to the Witch King. The Nazgul berates this man because it is said that no man can kill the Witch King. This is when the soldier reveals herself to be Éowyn and a woman. With one mighty stroke she severs the winged mount's head. The Witch King arises to strike her down, but then from behind he is struck by Merry, and in that moment Éowyn stabs under the helm of the Witch King and the leader of the Nazgul is killed. King Theoden lays dying, and he makes Éomer king of Rohan before he passes. Éomer knows that he must lead the men, but in that moment he sees his sister Éowyn laying in the field and grief overtakes him. Éomer, enraged, leads his men in a charge against the forces of Mordor. Unfortunately, they are soon surrounded. Black sails are seen coming up the river. Hope seems lost, for they are enemy ships. However, when the ships arrive, it is Aragorn along with reinforcements. Together Aragorn and Éomer lead the men to defeat the remaining host of Mordor. Back at the gate, Gandalf had driven off the leader of the Nine. He was about to pursue when Pippin stops Gandalf and tells him of what Denethor intends to do. Gandalf decides to go to stop Denethor's madness. When they arrive, they find Beregond fighting the servants of Denethor. Gandalf stops the fighting and saves Faramir, but Denethor cannot accept that there is hope, and in the end, burns himself to death. When Gandalf and the others take Faramir to the healers, they hear the wails of the Witch King as he dies. The battle is over for now. Merry enters the city and gets a bit lost before being found by Pippin. Merry is still shaken by the experience of striking the Witch King, and Pippin must take him to the healing house. Merry and Éowyn, along with many others who were afflicted by the Black Rider's touch, seem to only get worse with time. A legend says that the king will have the hands of a healer, and so Gandalf seeks out Aragorn. Aragorn comes into the city at Gandalf's behest and sets to work healing the afflicted. Aragorn's healing ability is proof enough for some, including Faramir, that Aragorn is the rightful king of Gondor. When all is finished, they are able to rest for a bit. Legolas and Gimli join Merry and Pippin and tell the story of how they traveled along the paths of the dead, and how the dead helped them to scare off the pirates, and how they had taken the ships to continue to sail to Minas Tirith. The leaders meet in the council to discuss their next move. Gandalf suggests that the best ploy is to keep Sauron's attention so that the Ring-Bearer can finish his quest to Mount Doom. They agree and head toward the Black Gate to assault Mordor itself. Along the way they pronounce Aragorn to be the King Elisar. When they arrive at the Black Gate, there is no enemy to be found. From the gate comes the mouth of Sauron. He presents them with items that are Sam and Frodo's, including Frodo's mithril shirt. The mouth offers to release them for a cost, but Gandalf refuses. Then the gates open and the host of Mordor is before them. Behind and around them too, for it's a trap set to capture the army of men. The battle rages on around Pippin, and in the confusion, Pippin manages to kill a troll, but the troll lands on him. As he begins to lose consciousness, Pippin thinks he hears, "The eagles are coming," but he believes that isn't his tail, it is Bilbo's.